Hi, welcome to the Aping Along podcast. The podcast where I, Noah, and my closest friend, Luke, have an open conversation with each other about what it means to live a good life. We share stories, insights, techniques, and thoughts that may help you on your path to improving the well-being of yourself and other apes like you. In this third episode, we discuss the utility of structure, minimalism in the digital age, and a new perspective on living a good life. Enjoy. So this episode, we haven't really thought of anything beforehand to talk about because we noticed that the past couple of episodes we haven't actually been tense during the episode as so much, but it sounds quite tense. It sounds like we're trying to look a certain way, so we kind of want to have a little bit more of a loose episode.
What some people would call a conversation.
Yeah. We don't know how to do that.
No. How about we talk about structure, seeing as we have seemed maybe a bit too structured the past few episodes, and seeing as we both really like this, we would call it a technique, but maybe a principle is a better term.
Right, a value perhaps.
Yeah, maybe. What do you think about when I say structure?
So immediately I think about structuring life. You have a plan about what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. The difficult thing about having a structured life, which is incredibly useful for knowing you're making progress in the things that are important to you, is that it becomes tyrannizing to yourself. To follow a structure requires discipline.
Yeah. And to follow a structure for a prolonged time, you will gain discipline.
Yeah. And discipline is a value of mine, but you can become too tense. And for example, one of the things you could do is, if you have a time management system, you could say, well, I have 1 hour for this friend of mine. And that friend may be, going through a really difficult time. And, if you're too structured, you may actually lose the things that are important in life.
I mean, boy, do I love structure. Structure is like one of my favorite things in the world. But my answer to that issue would be that, no, that's not the proper way to structureize a conversation with a friend that you know is having a hard time. The way to solve that problem is just by structuring better. So, for example, just scheduling more time or knowing in advance that you may require a lot more time than you would expect, or a lot less too, for that matter, when you go to see this friend, to talk to them, to hear them out, or make them feel heard about their sorrows or whatever is bothering them.
Yeah. But would you say that it's probably better not to structure like time with friends too narrowly?
No, yeah, sure. So there's a certain degree to which you would like to structure things. And I mean, I've received feedback throughout my life that I am too structured and I lose my energy or my metaphorical fire, my inner flame or whatever you would refer to it. And they say that I lose spontaneity due to my structure. The way that I answer to that is no, I don't, because I plan for spontaneity as well. So although that may sound quite weird, I think that when I have any spontaneous idea or episode or whatever, I try to plan for it. So when an adventurous idea occurs to me, I try to act on it and try to see what I can do to make it possible in a structured way. And if that's not possible, then that's fine too. I'll go with the flow. If I know that I want to do something crazy at a certain time, then I will plan for that. I will make some time for it, and I will realize in advance that this might take a little bit longer, or this might fuck up my lower back because I suffer from a lower back injury or whatever. But I think structure in a certain way is thinking about things in advance.
Just for the listeners, I'm a less structured person than Luke is, but Luke is actually also quite a spontaneous person.
In Noah's eyes.
In my eyes, yeah. Well, it depends. Yeah, I suppose. I know people definitely who go about their lives essentially just stumbling upon everything that's happening. Right? They wake up, they have no idea what their day is going to look like, and
they stumble out of bed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they somehow fill it with many things to do, and I'm not like that at all. I like to know in advance. I like to have some certainty.
Yeah.
I think it's very important to strike a balance, and that balance is different from person to person, to doing things that are chaotic and doing things that are orderly. which is something that Peterson talks about a lot. I'm not a huge fan of Peterson necessarily.
It's not true. You called his book the best book you ever read.
Did I really?
Yes,
I can't
you
imagine.
have.
Oh,
No, you definitely have. And I found that really interesting because there's so much Christian circle jerk in there. We both.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
We both
Now I
concluded
remember.
that it was just the best book for you at the right time.
At the right time, right. So we're talking about 12 Rules for Life, which is a book by Jordan Peterson. He's a psychology professor, or he was. I don't think he practices anymore because he took a break. His book is basically about order, how to bring order to your life if you're in chaos. And I was in chaos when I read it, so I immediately recognized many of the issues, and it made it so that not only I gained a lot of hope from it, but it was also a recognition in my chaos.
Yeah.
And I recognized what was happening and why it was happening.
Right. So he offered you some form of structure or a technique to apply more structure in your life, which really resonated with you at the time due to the chaotic nature of your life at the time.
Yeah. And the strange thing is, I can't imagine that I ever would have called it the best book I ever read. But now I remember that I did.
Yeah, and I've got you on tape, man. So I can't get out here now.
So that has definitely changed.
Yeah, interesting. So let's introduce another concept here that I think relates closely to both structure and to discipline. I've been trying something new lately, as of late, and it's called the Minimalist Game. It's a game inspired by the practice of minimalism, and minimalism is where you remove excess from your life. And with excess, I mean excess stuff, excess thoughts, excess anything that is not contributing any value to your life whatsoever. And so mostly this takes the form of physical stuff, clutter, things that you don't use often or you don't use at all. You just keep for some sentimental reason that you know you will likely never satisfy. Or the Minimalist Game is about throwing out or cleaning up one item a day, and it increases with an item a day for every day that the challenge goes on.
So you remove one item the first day, 2 items the second day, and like 30 items the 30th day.
Right, and so you do this for 30 days, which adds up to 465 items, which sounds like quite a lot, but in reality actually isn't.
Yeah, I can hardly imagine that I even have that many items,
yes,
apart from like clothing and things that I actually need.
Right, but those items count up as well, because I have a lot of clothes that I don't use anymore, and that would make another person really happy to use. By the way, the average American household has over 300,000 items in it, but yeah, that's a discussion for another.
Yeah, it's also difficult to define what an item is, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, my point here is that the concept that I'm trying to induce is deliberation. And what I mean with that is thinking twice about what you are going to do or about what you are doing at this time. Or not necessarily even doing, but also thinking or what kind of values you want to pursue. And deliberation is this third concept that ties it up together really well, because I think that with deliberation you can make choices consciously so that they align with your values. And you use a structure to design a system wherein you can make these deliberate choices, and you use the discipline to make those choices.
Yeah. It actually makes me feel motivated to start doing a similar challenge. But also what I was thinking about is my digital clutter.
Right. This is a major thing for people.
I very often, like I have like in my Chrome settings set that it remembers the last tabs that I have open.
Right.
Because I often have tabs open that I know that like I want to finish watching the video later or read an article or something.
This is a good one.
Yeah, and I often have so many tabs open that I can't even read what the tabs are.
Yeah.
And that's an example. Another one is, I suppose I'm going to introduce yet another tool to structure, which is a very normal thing to use for us, which is GTD.
Right.
Which is a system, getting things done. It's the full name. It's designed by David Allen. It's a way to capture every important thought that you have and then categorize it, make it mostly actionable, and then hopefully you can design a system in which you can actually execute these tasks. And in my GTD system, I have so many projects and tasks open that I just lose sight. And decluttering that would give so much clarity.
Yeah.
And also opens up the possibility to really work on the things that are truly important, the values that I truly hold, and not some vague goal that I've had for 10 years.
Yes, I think that could introduce a major change for you to handle those things a bit more deliberate. And like I said earlier, I'm a structured person and I love structure. And the same goes for discipline, actually. Over the last couple of years, I've received the compliment multiple times of different people that they think that I'm the most disciplined person that they know. And I think that's an awesome thing to hear.
I absolutely agree with that.
That's a great compliment. I really enjoy hearing that. And just for an example, I started doing cold showers for over a year. I started doing it in the winter when it was coldest, just to challenge myself. And I really love doing that. Now, due to my lower back injury, I can't do that anymore, sadly. Structure and discipline were two things that I've had in check for quite some time now, for a few years, I'd say. The deliberate living thing, however, is a new concept that was introduced to me only weeks ago. Sure, I've heard of minimalism earlier, and I had just never really taken the time to get into it a bit deeper. And since I have, it feels like there's just this part of my consciousness that's been upgraded. Because the way that I see certain things now, when you were talking earlier about how you have these tabs open because you would like to take a look at them in the future, or because you think you would find any value in them in the future. Now that I've got this new upgraded piece of software running on my brain, I can see so many things that are designed for this. Like, think about the watch later button on YouTube. This is sort of designed to add more, not necessarily clutter, because it's sort of organized in a neat space. But having the tabs open all the time, this functionality is also a form of clutter, unless you use these tabs all the time, but you definitely don't. So they don't add direct value, and the effort that it would take to just open the tab again, or to add it to a bookmark, or to put it in its proper place, is just so little.
Yeah.
So it's also a form of knowing that the decision that you are making is the wrong one, but you're just too lazy to make the right one. You're just making a decision which you know you will receive less satisfaction of in the future.
And this is, I think, also an interesting problem nowadays, is that due to all of the bots that so many social media platforms are deploying rather.
Yes.
Well, I guess they are employees in some sense.
Yeah, well,
probably some of the most productive employees that they have.
Yeah.
They do a great job of keeping people on the website. If you've ever had the experience of landing on a YouTube video that is completely random, of which you don't know how you got there,
and you are questioning the nature of this video.
yeah, and your life. This is the bot finding the videos that have the most exciting thumbnails and the most interesting titles to keep you engaged and to keep you clicking, and they're very good at it. And they will only get much, much better as machine learning algorithms and techniques start evolving.
Yep.
We need a way to make conscious decisions on our social media hygiene and our, I guess, digital hygiene in general.
Yeah.
I've been subject to this myself. I'm a huge consumer of YouTube videos.
Yes, you are.
I get lost in them. I enjoy them at the time. I watch many TED Talks, many interesting videos. Actually, I actually do learn a lot. This week, I took a break from work by watching YouTube videos on math, because I found it interesting for the first time in my life. This is the channel 3 Blue 1 Brown. To some extent, I'm justifying my own irrational behavior.
Yeah, you definitely are.
But on the other hand, I am actually learning from it.
Yeah, okay, so this is quite an interesting part, because I think this is really a perfect example of what deliberate living could mean for one. And this is actually, right now I realize that I've been doing this for a little bit longer actually than just the start of this month, because I started the Minimalist Game this month, but I've quit YouTube and Netflix and Reddit and gaming for about 2 to 3 months now, I think. Something like that. And they were quite conscious decisions of mine, because I recognized that I was quite addicted to YouTube and to Reddit in particular. And I found that I should just quit them to observe what would happen. And these were quite easy decisions, actually. So I didn't delete my account. I just made the agreement with myself that I would not use either of these platforms for any recreational purposes. Now, I'm a programmer, a project manager, and a coach, so I have to use Google often, and I also have to use YouTube every now and in a while. That means that I could use YouTube for professional purposes, but not for recreational purposes. Now, this experiment succeeded quite well, actually. So I ended up deleting my Reddit account, which was also a form of decluttering.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I had cleaned up my YouTube subscription, and I am no longer addicted to YouTube at all. I just went to YouTube today. I looked at my subscription box, and I love seeing that the last video that is in my subscription box was uploaded over 3 days ago, which means that none of my subscriptions have uploaded any video for 3 days. And that's just an amazing, neat feeling, because I can see every video now, every video in my subscription box, and I know that if I watch it, I will get value from it. I will get absolute value, no regret in having watched it. That's what decluttering your digital life could look like.
Yeah. So what do you do with the free time? Because that's a concern of mine, that I watch YouTube videos, and that's part of my digital life. I also use Reddit quite often. I do that, at least in my mind, to relax. You know, I've just been working a whole day. I come home, I'm kind of tired. I want to relax. Many people watch television. I like to watch YouTube.
Yeah.
I even learn a little bit from it, sometimes a lot.
Yeah.
You know, what else to do? Because reading, for example, it doesn't seem quite as relaxed.
Right. So I understand your concern, but first of all, I would submit to you that watching YouTube or reading Reddit or anything like is not actually relaxing. These activities are extremely stimulating to your mind. Now, while they may feel sort of mindless or not too intense or whatever, they are in fact not really what relaxing means. Or what I would see as relaxing is taking a walk, for example, or just hanging out on a chair and doing nothing. Eating something completely mindful. Now, these are maybe extreme examples, and don't get me wrong, I probably don't relax consciously enough in my life, because I work a lot as of late, and a lot of my time is still filled on the internet, but doing things that I retrospectively can look at and say confidently that I have received value from this. I have received value because I wanted to do this, not because I was drawn to it by receiving any dopamine hit, but because I thought that it would give me value beforehand, and that was not a irrational voice in my head telling me that I should probably do this because it would feel nice or anything.
It's not that I can't think of anything more productive to do. I'm concerned about living a life where you're only concerned with productivity or doing nothing.
You can relax in many other ways, just by talking to people around you, for example. This is an experience that costs barely any effort.
Yeah, and I suppose, like, it's so strange how, you know, we've grown up, you know, in the digital age, and this has become so normal to us. It's seriously become a second nature, and it's hard for me to imagine a life without that digital, I suppose, satisfaction.
Yeah.
On any moment's notice, right? If I'm bored for even a second, I can just grab my phone, open up Reddit or open up WhatsApp, and immediately be engaged again.
Yeah.
And this never used to be so. And it's also an interesting question as to what that does to our brains. Of course, this is often only viewed in a negative light, and I think it is mostly a negative thing. But the digital age has also brought many advantages with it.
Definitely.
But it's, to quote Fight Club, which is probably quoting something else, the things you own end up owning you.
Right. Well, I don't think that the tools necessarily are evil in and of themselves. Rather, it's we, the people, and the way that we use the tools that become evil, or not necessarily evil, but wrong. So social media, for example, they are just a tool, and in essence, they have the possibility to add great value to one's life. But it's the people that use it in a certain way that I think detracts value from most people, their lives. And this is where I think that deliberate living really comes in as a concept for one to just step away from some of these media or tools or technological developments, so that you can just abstain from it for a while just like I did with YouTube and Reddit. So you can discover what value these things really add to your life. And afterwards, after having abstained for them for a bit, you can judge honestly to what extent you would want these things in your life.
I want to get back to the first episode for a moment.
Right.
Where we discussed what it means to live a good life. We defined living a good life mostly, at least I defined it, I believe, as increasing positive emotion and reducing suffering.
I have no clue what I said about it.
No, I
completely
don't remember exactly either, but that at least used to be my view. That, and then later, meaning got added.
Sure.
Which is essentially improving the lives of others, increasing happiness and reducing suffering again.
Yeah.
I was absolutely convinced, and this was mostly because of the work that Sam Harris has done on this topic, that all things that are good about life have to come down to increasing positive emotion or reducing suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And we have discussed that not all positive emotion is in fact positive. So I renamed it appropriate positive emotion, and not in the podcast, but later.
Right.
But I also added a different element since then, because I've been thinking about it. What actually does it mean to live a good life? I haven't yet figured out even how to sort of marry happiness, or the personal happiness, with the reduction of suffering in the world. If you would live a life that is absolutely neutral, you couldn't experience positive emotion, it would still be a life well lived if you could help reduce suffering in the world.
Right.
Essentially, I asked myself the question, is there another element that even if you wouldn't help reduce suffering in the world, and you wouldn't yourself become happier or suffer less, is there another element that would still make life worth living? And I think I did find an element. And that other element is flourishing. Just to explain for a moment why this is a bedrock element, just as the other two variables are. You only have one life. There are things...
depends on what you believe, but...
it depends on what it actually is, but it's very likely that you only have one life, right? Considering, at least as yourself, right? Like, it's impossible to have the same brain again.
I mean, you never know.
It's incredibly unlikely.
Sure, I'll grant you this for this time.
Anyways, so given that you only have one life, there are so many things you can experience. Living a life in isolation, in poor health, just absolutely still, even if you would be happy, and even somehow you would not cause suffering to others, would that be a life well lived? And there are, this is not just an abstract thought. There are actually drugs in some sense that would do a similar thing, right? If you were a heroin addict, for example, you can absolutely destroy your life. And if you had just had enough heroin, you wouldn't actually suffer, at least not mentally, I don't think. And I don't know enough about heroin to actually make that claim. But the thing is, I don't think that would be a life well lived, and I don't think anybody would claim that. A life well lived is also a life, even if it doesn't cause positive emotion for yourself or reduce suffering in the world, is also a life where you experience new things, a life where you're blooming, a life where you're developing, a life in good health.
Sure.
That was my rant.
Yeah, well, no, I think that's incredibly important too. And I think that actually quite ties in a bit in deliberate living. Because we sort of do these projects together from time to time, where we try to figure out this big philosophical question as if we've figured the entire world out.
We have. We're very, very confident about that.
Yes. I mean, figuring out how to live a good life is also one of these things that you've been working on as a side project as of late.
Well, it's been a theme in my life for, I believe, about 8 or 9 years that I've been thinking about this.
Sure, but not as fleshed out as you've been doing for the past few weeks, I think.
So I thought I had it figured out.
Right, sure. So you've had your definitions over the
years, yeah.
Sure, you've just made a development in it lately.
Yeah.
Right. So this is something I think that we'll be working on soon together, but every now and then I think about it. And what I've realized is that I think there's two things that I find really important in that last category, and which is That's deliberate living. I think that is really important for flourishing. And the second one is seeking discomfort.
Yeah.
And that is something that I find great value in. I think Stoicism is a great philosophy for doing this. Doing cold showers each morning instead of any warm shower at all is also a great forum to seek discomfort. But this goes way bigger than doing cold showers. This is a philosophy to live your life by. This is a way in which you could continually challenge yourself and experience extreme growth simply by doing things that seem hard to do and that would seem uncomfortable to do. But since you are doing them anyway, you are experiencing things that you would have never experienced if you weren't to take some leap of faith or if you weren't to do this challenge that you would find really hard.
Even if it is a negative thing.
Yeah.
And that's also, I think, part of what has made me add this to the different elements of a good life. Because what I've been focusing on for, well, I suppose about 8 years now, has been mostly reduction in suffering, which is, there's a lot of theory on how to reduce, and even practices on how to reduce suffering. Meditation is something we talked about. Acceptance is one. Cognitive behavioral therapy would be another one. The Stoicism has elements of this.
Yeah.
And this is very interesting and very useful. One of the things that I've noticed about my life is that I don't go out and do things enough. And the fear for me is that they will cause negative emotion. And if your goal in life is to be happy, if you feel that with enough tools you would never have to feel negative emotion,
you're just dead wrong.
Well, I think it's possible to never experience suffering, at least. For example, through enlightenment. It's very unlikely that you will achieve it. A fear of mine has been, well, if I'm going to go out and experience new things that I find scary, then I will actually have a worse life emotion because of the negative emotion. And it doesn't seem to go away, right? That's the thing for me. So, for example, social anxiety is one we, of course, talked about.
Yeah.
I notice that this is a recurring theme. No matter how many times, it feels at least, no matter how many times I overcome the initial anxiety, it keeps appearing again and again.
Yeah, but I think it's really logical to feel this way, right? I think it's quite intuitive to avoid, probably this is something that evolution has taught us, that we should avoid negative emotions or negative states. We should avoid pain because pain is a signal that tells us that something is wrong. And this is probably true for mental emotions as well.
Right.
Having a negative emotion signals that something's going wrong or something should be done about your current state. So I think it's really logical for you to avoid these or try to avoid these kind of things. And that's what's quite paradoxical about the entire philosophy of seeking discomfort in your life, because it feels
like you're punishing yourself for nothing.
Yeah.
And that seems very like nonsensical. Like, what? Just beat yourself with a stick. Right?
Yes.
Just slam your head into a wall.
Right.
Seek discomfort.
No sane person would do this until they've experienced the merits of bashing their head in a wall.
Right.
Figuratively speaking.
Obviously, don't harm yourself.
Mistake our rambling for medical advice once again.
We are not medical professionals and don't know how many times we have to repeat this. So seeking discomfort is not meant as a pro self-harm mantra. It is meant as mostly as a way not to go out of your way to do the things that you want to do, that you think are important to experience in life when they cause you pain or even suffering. So if you have a fear of heights and you've had this for your entire life and you know it's never going away, if you've already tried many therapies, let's say, nothing has helped, and you get the one opportunity. And seek discomfort comes from a YouTube channel. What are they called again?
Yes Theory.
Yes Theory. And they had one of their videos, a guy with fear of heights went into a helicopter to fly above New York, I believe it was. Even if it's not a wonderful experience for you, even if it causes you anxiety, suffering, it is still valuable to experience these new things that life has to offer.
Right, and often you will grow.
Yeah, but even if you wouldn't, it would still be valuable.
Sure, but I think that the seek discomfort philosophy mostly resides in the fact that most people would grow more if they were to seek discomfort more often.
That's true, but that shouldn't be the only goal. Because, as an example, the anxiety that I experience in social situations, and at least in group settings, doesn't seem to improve even if I keep trying to put myself in uncomfortable situations.
Well, you say it doesn't seem to improve, but can you confidently tell me that it's been constant for the past 5 years? There's been no changes in the anxiety you experience?
Well, I can tell you that some of the worst experiences have been fairly recent. I don't know how much of a benchmark that would be.
Well, it would be a peak experience, so...
The answer is I don't know. If there is noticeable improvement, I haven't been satisfied by it.
Right. Well, the question then could be, are you seeking discomfort often enough? And
no, but even if I would be, and it wouldn't bring me growth, right? If that would be the case, my whole point is...
that would still be valuable, yeah, sure.
And that's very important, because otherwise I wouldn't do it, right? If I would try this for, say, a year...
Well, I would say that there would have to be value in the thing that you are going to do. So, for example, bashing your head into a wall wouldn't add any value. So regardless of the negative emotions that you would potentially suffer, you would have to realize if there would be any value in pursuing this discomfort that you are anticipating. And if there would be any potential value in it, then yes, you should probably pursue this discomfort.
I don't necessarily think that it's enough to say that it would have to have any value. I think there needs to be a balance then between the value that it gives and the negative emotion that it might entail, right? I mean, there are even seriously dangerous things that people could do that could be valuable, but I think in general, more importantly, a life with much pain, even if that would be a life with a lot of growth, I don't think would still be a very good life. I think there needs to be a balance between whatever discomfort you are seeking and how good your life is moment to moment.
Yeah, I agree. So I would thank you very much for listening.